Hi everyone, my name is David and this is Film Collector Archive, and today we're going to be taking a look at Leap of Faith, William Friedkin on The Exorcist. I wanted to take the opportunity to set the camera up in front of myself and just get some thoughts down on what I felt about this documentary. So I actually just finished watching it, and so this is one of those impromptu, just want to get my thoughts out there in kind of a, I guess you could call it a review, but just more get my thoughts out there on what I thought on the film. So this is a documentary produced by Shudder, and basically this is a William Friedkin having a conversation with the audience about his film, The Exorcist, for about an hour and 40 minutes. And William Friedkin is one of those directors that I have a lot of respect for. And he's one of those directors that I could honestly listen to him talk for hours and hours and hours. I always feel like he has a lot of interesting things to say, and he definitely holds my attention, and could easily do so over the hour and 40-minute runtime of this documentary. So in terms of The Exorcist, I feel like it's an interesting film for many reasons, but one of the main reasons that I feel like it's such an interesting film is because it's one of those films which the reputation, it has such a reputation, especially in the horror film community, but just even in the film community in general, that precedes it. But for me, at least, and I've seen the film multiple times. The interesting thing is, I feel like this is a film that largely transcends genre. In that, I don't see this as a horror film. It's a film that focuses much more on crisis of faith than it does on being a classic horror film, for lack of a better way to put it. It doesn't follow a lot of the tropes that horror films do, and so in that sense, I feel like this film really does transcend not only the horror genre but just genre in general. And as William Friedkin is discussing his film, it's interesting to see his take on that. And I definitely feel like that's kind of the ground that he stands on. I don't think that he even thought he was directing a horror film. There's certainly horrific elements, and Linda Blair, her performance in the film is amazing, and really has stood the test of time in terms of practical effects and just sheer terror, which builds throughout the film. And her being as young as she was when she starred in the film, it's quite an undertaking for someone of her age. But yes, what we're dealing with here is largely a crisis of faith, a battle that is really waged kind of more so in the mind, and it's kind of brought to more literal terms in some of these scenes in which we deal with possession and things of that nature. One of the things that that Friedkin talks about is kind of the ambiguity of the ending of the film and being something that he can't even fully explain. So William Blatty, the author of The Exorcist, the source material that Friedkin was working with, they had some back and forth on how the ending of the film should go. And Friedkin even says that he can't fully explain the ending or fully even stand with the ending just because of the level of ambiguity, that's happening. And he says at one point too, he's never quite fallen in love with the idea of ambiguity, but it certainly is present in the film, and I understand maybe the differing opinions on how that should have been filmed or not filmed. But for me, I like the ending of the film because it feels like it's coming from a filmmaker who trusts his audience to come up with answers for themselves, and I tend to like that type of thing, where you don't have to have everything spoon-fed to you. More what we're presented with are ideas, and then you take those ideas and you kind of run with it and come up with the conclusion on your own. It was interesting to note as well because he knew a lot of what he wanted, and one of those things was a score that felt like a cold hand on your shoulder, meaning he didn't want the score to be such that it was overpowering or that it took the film over completely. And so he shares an experience that he had, and as he related it, he said this is one of the most disappointing experiences of his life. Was he actually met with Bernard Herrmann, who has he's one of the most prolific composers, especially with film. My favorite Bernard Herrmann score being for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. He met with Friedkin, Friedkin being such a huge fan of Bernard Herrmann, and the first words out of Herrmann's mouth to him were that, yeah, he could probably work with this piece of crap. The first scene means absolutely nothing. Axe that. And he said that he wanted to use a church organ, and I believe the organ was in a specific church in England, I believe is where he said it was located, and he wanted to have it be a very powerful score, and but he's dumping all over the film, the rough cut of the film that he had seen, and Friedkin says he got up, shook Herrmann's hand, and said, "Thank you for allowing me to meet an interesting person," and walked out the room, never to utter another word to him about it. And he said that was one of the most disappointing experiences of his life. So it's one of those experiences where you meet one of your heroes and you realize they're a little less than maybe what you imagined they would be. Now that obviously doesn't take away from the fact that Bernard Herrmann has composed some of the greatest film scores of all time, and I'm certainly of that opinion. But it was really interesting to hear William Friedkin express that and kind of talk through that moment. So he and there was back and forth with again with William Blatty as well on the because he wanted to film the novel, and even William Blatty said, "Hey, I have a surprise for you," and he presented William Friedkin with a screenplay. He penned the screenplay, or at least a draft of the screenplay, and he knew that it wasn't right. He thought it was not loyal enough to the original novel, and so he obviously didn't use the screenplay or the script that Blatty had written. So there was even back and forth there. The difference between that and the Bernard Herrmann discussion was that Friedkin and Blatty were remained very good friends and had a healthy kind of back and forth throughout the film, including again the ending. They were of differing opinions on how that should go, but Friedkin did bend to Blatty in kind of what he wanted to see. And of course, I'm not wanting to give away spoilers. If you haven't seen the film, The Exorcist, I have here, this is the Digibook, Blu-ray Digibook presentation, which I'm really happy to have in the collection. This actually includes the extended director's cut and the original theatrical version, and it actually has a really nice personal message here from William Friedkin, and then some writings on the film. But the point of my reviewing Leap of Faith is not to spoil the film in any way. So I want you to definitely see the film for yourself, but just wanted to get some thoughts out there. I think Leap of Faith is a really well-crafted documentary. Again, if you're into documentaries and you're into kind of the ideas behind film and filmmaking and that type of thing, this is definitely for you, and it receives a very high recommendation. I just rated this on Letterboxd as a 4.5 out of 5. So it receives a hearty recommendation from me. One last note that I wanted to make here. Friedkin discusses the inspiration that he received from a lot of the classical painters and how he lit scenes, and that wasn't something that I had in my mind as I've watched the films as many times as I have. But as they went through and showed different shots from the film as they related to the classical painters, it became really evident that that was an intentional move on how he was lighting different scenes. And so it's interesting. I don't feel like I can watch the film the same way again, knowing, after having seen this documentary, how much he was thinking these different things through, even down to the score. So I'm interested to watch the film again really soon and kind of compare my notes and thoughts on the film. But this is a film that I enjoy immensely, and it was interesting because I introduced a close friend to the film in the last couple of years. We sat down and watched it together, and he's not one that typically gravitates towards horror films like I am, like I typically do. But I told him, I said, no, this is not a typical horror film, and kind of explained some of my thoughts just very briefly with him, and we watched, and he was really blown away. So even a non-horror fan could see just immense value in this particular film. So I'm going to leave you with that. Just wanted to give you a few thoughts. Sometimes I like to just set up the camera and just let the thoughts flow out. So that's definitely the case here. But thank you very much for joining me. Let me know down in the comments if this is a film that you've seen. Let me know your thoughts on The Exorcist. Do you like The Exorcist? Is it not really your thing? Do you think there's a lot deeper meaning there beyond just maybe a horror movie? Again, kind of the the reputation that precedes the film. Let me know your thoughts. And until next time, let's keep the conversation on film alive and well.